Okay, so this is my brainstorming pad. It is December 26th. And I'm thinking in general about brainstorming and the importance of brainstorming to find solutions to a problem. So, when there is a problem that you're trying to solve, there are symptoms and the illness and the cause, what is causing it, the bacteria, virus, let's see, the virus, and most people will see the symptoms, but you call the experts to determine your illness. And so what do? You diagnose. The experts, they diagnose to determine the illness, and they will ask questions. When you diagnose, you ask questions, and you ask people who can see the symptoms, and they have their own theories of what's causing it. So the experts will, either it's a doctor or if you have design problem, they ask what could be causing it, and they also have their own assessment at the beginning, like first impressions, just like what everyone can see, and then they have their own hypotheses of what's causing it. The point is to diagnose and get, if the problem is seen, for example, the problem is seen, you ask questions from different people who could see the in different angles. That's the point of asking questions. And so you will have a holistic view, and these people could be the people in the organization. Okay, that's in general, but the point that I want to make here in the brainstorming is that when you have an idea, solution for a solution, your how, let's say this is one idea. Your how and why you share that idea, and the people will look at this idea and they may take your how or why or not. So the mistake is when you kill an idea because it doesn't match your how and why, right? So this how and why is subjective to this person in the way that they see the problem. So when you're brainstorming, the healthy way of conducting a brainstorming session with other people is to be open to ideas. And how do you become open to ideas? This person could take the idea and have their own how and why. So that's when we say that the idea inspired them. The same idea can inspire them to solve the problem in the way that they see it. And their how and why could be different from this person who presented that idea, right? And because this part is subjective to the angle that the other person can see it. If they agree on the way that they see things, whether they see it the same way or they can empathize with the logic that this person sees a problem and the why, when that allows them to be even more open that this idea will help solve the problem. There are different opinions when you talk to a person, for example, a designer, and you're talking about a problem with design. Or let's say, okay, this is designer, the client, the engineering, and accounting or finance. This could be business or whatever. So they may have their own feelings that you're seeing the symptoms, right? But they can't determine what's the cause. And if they have an idea for a solution for design, the opinions are not equal in terms of solution, because the designer is the expert when it comes to solving a design problem through design. So when other people have an idea, they probably have they have a picture quickly of what can solve this. And if okay, let's focus on the design and the designer. If you don't know what makes a good design, how do you know what makes a bad design bad? So a designer knows what makes a good design. Everybody have their own feeling of what's good and what's bad. It depends on the exposure of the person. If this client is exposed to really good designs, they have the ability to explain it or cite examples what are good designs that designer agrees would be good design. If the finance person is exposed to good designs, they can agree to the importance of the design. If the engineer, for example, doesn't know or is not that exposed to good design, whatever he sees that's good design could be not the same level as other people, right? Because the designer, the point is the level of exposure and the ability to judge what makes a good design, because it is different for different people. That's a person, that's a person, that's a person. Did I do that right? Or maybe I should do this here. Or let's put an I. So the level of exposure, right? This exposure is the building of visual library. The visual library of a designer would be expected. If you're a professional designer, the expectation is that you have exposed yourself to good designs more than the average person. And the acceptance or the reception, or even having a container, if you are interested in something, you have this container that is being poured constantly. If you don't have the interest of what is design or whatever, it's like you don't have the cup that will fill you to build your library. So it's intentional, but for designers who have a natural attraction to beautiful things, good designs, it comes naturally, like they already have it even as they're young. And it gets filled up because they're so interested in it, and they collect things. They collect things in what they see, what is good and what's not, and they probe, they wonder. So the level of their judgment and acceptance for what's good and what's not has been trained at an earlier stage. It could be from their childhood, and it could be from it's possible to catch up when they decide later on they want to be a designer. Usually that is inspired by something, by another designer or a really, really good design. Many ways why a person would be attracted to this kind of profession. And the point that I'm saying about the level of exposure is that someone who decided to focus on finance, like as a career, if they grew up in a home where the parent is a designer, or someone who is mature or who likes design, they are positive. They have acceptance when it comes to design, and also the level of appreciation is much higher than someone who is not exposed to it, unless they have a natural attraction or openness when it comes to good design. So this is interest. Having a cup is number one, interest. So people who start only having an interest in design because they're forced by external, or something in the business isn't working, and they never thought that design should play an important role from the beginning of building a product, right? Usually it's a client and engineer. Or this is also the same with someone who has a money and wants to build a house, and they get a carpenter and they design it themselves. There's no problem if you're the one who has the money and you're an architect. There's no problem if you have the money, even if you're an architect, and then you only get a carpenter, but you do the research to plan like an architect. So you do your own research, you become like the architect, even if you started that time with, learn on the job or something like that, or because you have the money now, you want to build something, so you start learning what the architect knows, and the intention is to build it with the mind of an architect. So there's no problem with that, because maybe you have the money and also the time to do that. What we see here, like for example, in a country that is said to be a third world country, or I think there are different ways that you define a country, whether it's third world or not. The point that I want to make is in less progressive states, is that the right way to put it? Like here in Southeast Asia, in the Philippines, for example, you'll see many houses in the provinces or even the cities that they look the same because they're built by a carpenter but not an architect. So they have a look that is so much different than places where when you go to BGC or townhouses or apartments in Rockwell, for example. It's not going to look like that because those are designed by an architect. So when you have dreams and a vision, that is, you want to build a city and you want it to look like, let's say, there's this architect, Bjark Ingels. I think his company is called BIG, Big. And you have a vision that is something like that, or like, let's say, Elon Musk. Those kinds of level. And you start with a carpenter. What you're gonna end up with is something in the sandbox that it's gonna be temporary. What does that mean? It's gonna be knocked down. Like you have an empty lot. You have visions of a skyscraper, or even if they're low rise, but really world-class buildings. When you don't get an architect, you're gonna end up with something temporary, like here in the Philippines is Bahay Kubo. So this is not to say that a Bahay Kubo can't be designed well. The point is, be ready that will be taken down, meaning like in a sandbox, you can't build on it suddenly a skyscraper. You can save this because they're meant to be, most Bahay Kubo, they're meant to be also transported. So, okay, if you have a nostalgic feeling, you can put it, suddenly later on you're gonna get an architect, and then you can preserve that for some reasons that are a lot really emotional reasons to keep it like that. So the bottom line here is, if you have a big vision and your vision is building something like these guys, or okay, if it's a product, let's say Apple by Steve Jobs. The way that they make things, they get professionals to illustrate the vision for them and determine what needs to be done in order to achieve this vision. So what Elon Musk did is he has a big plan. It's called a master plan. If you only have the capacity to build something like this, and your vision is like this, you can start small over here. What the architect would do is plan the whole thing, and based on your budget, you can start with this. And there are feasibility studies, and also the architect is part of, the architect gives this. He works together with the businessman, the designer or architect, and when it comes to the building, with the engineer. So they share the vision, and then you build it. Design, and build. Design thinking. So that's the point. If you have a vision of something that you'll see, to have homes or buildings like you see in BGC. BGC is in the Philippines, the Taguig area, or Makati. But you're building it with the mind like those that you see in the provinces, with resources that you're building it with a carpenter, for example, who has limited ideas when it comes to architecture and design. Then you're gonna end up with something that will look like everyone else, that is made by a carpenter. So there are many owners who can DIY things because they do the research, they understand the design principles, and still end up with really good designs. And there are those who just have the money and then leave it to someone who can build but have limited in the process. It's about the focus on problem solving. The designer solves design problems, and what they also plan. They plan, and also when there are no problems yet, it's like this is a landscape that you have, and then this is what you're trying to build. They have the questions that they probe, this is given by you or them, like they ask, and then they fill this up. The problems that are solved by the engineer is how to get to that master plan, how to make this real, how to make this building stand up, for example. Those are the problems that the engineer builds. The designer illustrates, translates the vision into something that can be seen by everyone. The builder translates what can be seen to be something that can be felt, like physically, by everyone. Because we live in a physical world. If it's only digital, then you can go with a prototype. But not to get off track here, because that's a different topic. So that's the thing. You plan with an architect, you build. The architect builds the master plan or the plan with the engineer. It's like that. If this is the idea that came from the business owner, you help. It's like a Venn diagram. Okay. That will be it for now.